William Jennings Bryan, four-time presidential candidate, led the prosecution and defended fundamentalism.
I think most of the people that were left of center enjoyed it for its putting bigotry and on display. That it was a fight between the years gone by and the years to come.
So packed was the courtroom that the trial was moved onto the lawn. There, Dara questioned Bryan as an expert witness on the Bible. Dara exposed Bryan's ignorance of science and challenged his religious beliefs. Eventually, the jury returned its verdict: guilty. Bryan had won his courtroom case, but he had lost in the court of public opinion. Exhausted and humiliated, he died less than a week later.
You could tell the story of this decade in terms of victories won that were part illusion, part triumph. Consider the new woman. She could vote, but was still a second-class citizen. And if she marched off to work, as millions did, she marched when day's work was done right back into the kitchen, still considered her natural place in life. In matters more intimate, well, Freud and free love entered the vocabulary, and F. Scott Fitzgerald could write that none of the Victorian mothers had any idea how casually their daughters were accustomed to being kissed. So kissing and anything else, especially the unmentionable anything else, was not to be flaunted.
The morality, as I knew it in the 20s, was nothing like free love.
The liberated woman of that time liberated herself privately, if you get my meaning. It was not advertised much, and often didn't let on when she went back to Dubuque, Iowa, that she was liberated when she was in Chicago.
We didn't hear about virginity. We didn't know the word, but had she done it? It was that kind of thing. And if she had done it, she was looked down on.
Whatever you did, you didn't have this, quote, honesty that you have now, where you do what you want to do and didn't care who knew it. This wasn't the case. People might have been doing the very same thing, but it was a time of discretion.
Discretion in relations between the sexes. As for relations between the races, half a century after emancipation, there still was little contact between blacks and whites, even among people of goodwill.
I was never conscious of a black person until I got into high school.
We had an almost exclusively white community where I lived in Scranton.
The only association we did have with blacks, as I say, as far as employing them for household work, that was my only contact.
We didn't have very many blacks in New York at that time. At least I wasn't so conscious of them.
We had no race relation problem. We didn't know them, that was it.
When there was contact between the races, it was often hostile.
A certain section of the city of Chicago, they didn't allow blacks in their neighborhood, and we didn't allow the whites in our neighborhood.
The relationships between blacks and whites were on a basis of master and servant, for example. Most of the blacks who were around were in service positions like janitors, like porters, like chauffeurs, like valets, like waiters, and flunkies around in the saloons and so forth and so on.
We were completely segregated. No place to eat except the Union Station. And none of us could afford the Union Station.
There was no place in Chicago in the 20s and later than that where blacks could go and be accepted as whites were accepted.
Despite obstacles, there were blacks who forged better lives for themselves.
I was appointed January 10th, 1919, as the first black fireman in the New York Fire Department. The captain of the company retired forthwith because he didn't want the stigma of having the first black man in his company. And by them ostracizing me, not having anything to do with me, not speaking to me, as if I was an animal, it only made me stay by myself because nobody had anything to do with me. And I took the books and the rules and regulations and read up on them.
Eventually, Wesley Williams became the first black fire chief in New York City, serving until 1952 with distinction. Nothing tells us more about the confusing, hurtful 20s than the rebirth of the Ku Klux Klan. Founded in the bitterness of defeat in the South of 1866, it rose again in 1915. The Klan posed as the protector of old stock America and had 1 million members in 1921, almost 500,000 in Indiana alone, where it controlled elections.
There's counties in Indiana where they had all the adults, every male adult, but maybe 1 or 2 or 3, joined the Klan because he terrorized them.
I am the law in Indiana, said the head of the Indiana Klan. That was before he went to jail for raping and torturing a white woman. That was the beginning of the end for the Klan. Even a mass march through our nation's capital could not halt its decline. But the tail of the snake still wiggled, and racism worked its will through the use of rope, gun, fire, and law.
You would watch the paper to see who had been lynched and where was the lynching this morning. It was not good. In the South, it was very bad.
Throughout the decade, 281 blacks were lynched, each lynching different, each, in its evil way, the same. Poet Sterling Brown captured the terror and tragedy of a lynching in his poem, O Limb.
I had a buddy, 6 foot of man, muscled up, perfect, game to the heart. They don't come by ones. Outworked and outfought any man or 2 men. They don't come by 2. He spoke out of turn at the commissary. They gave him a day to get out the county. He didn't take it. He said, come and get me. They came and got him. And they came by 10s. He stayed in the county. He lays there dead. They don't come by 1s. They don't come by 2s. But they come by 10s.
So the 20s had not 2, but countless faces, some of them ugly and hateful. It's healthy to recognize the errors of our forebears, but also to realize that some people managed to do the best of things in the worst of times, and there were many acts of conscience by individuals who fought back against the repression of the time and kept strong the idea of decency and freedom. There were also those personal commitments which bonded men and women to one another and to their children. I'm the beneficiary of such vows, and so are many of you. No better evidence of how one age bequeaths to another its share of our collective history can be found than in those people who helped guide us through the 20s, and to whom we now give our special thanks.
Office worker, singer, poet, attorney, merchandise advertiser, actress and author, composer, packing house butcher, telephone company worker, social worker, coal miner, architect, garment worker, newspaperman, IWW organizer, elevator installer, garment worker, stockbroker, fireman.
And finally, from their golden anniversary in 1976, my parents. I'm Bill Moyers.